Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. And I'm going to talk to you about our little lung function machine. I chose for it the name La Petite Roche. That's our little town, Little Rock. In doing a review, I want to speak about the history of infant lung function testing, the development of the Petite Roche, and the current status of testing equipments for infants. Let's talk a little bit about the history. In the 30s, plethysmography was invented. It's called the body box. It measures the resting breathing of an infant. In the 60s, pneumotachographs were suitable for infants, and they were really on the market. Pneumotachographs measure airflow and they measure volume. Therefore, in the 60s and the 70s, the technique of measuring the lung size or the lung volume, one of them is the multiple breath washout using an inert gas like nitrogen, measured the functional residual capacity, abbreviated here as FRC. That's the volume of air that remains in the lung when the baby exhales quietly sitting in his little bed. So the FRC was the only lung volume measured for the past 40 years. In 1999, we measured the residual lung volume, which is integral in humans, for the first time with La Petite Roche. So we're talking about two items, the lung size, and that's the lung volume. But then there is another element, how fast a human can exhale, forced expiration. It is important if you want to know about airway obstruction, like the one you have in asthma. But tell an infant to breathe fast, he's not going to listen to you. He can't cooperate. In the 80s, an inflatable jacket was invented and placed around the chest. It's like a blood pressure cuff. You put it around the chest. And then you squeeze the baby during quiet breathing, then you get your forced expiration, and that helps you knowing about airway obstruction, like in asthma. But that was not sensitive enough. So in the 90s, we made the baby, we inflated the lung. So we raised the lung volume and then squeezed the chest from that level, and then it became more sensitive the way it is in adults. In 2010, so knowing infants cannot cooperate, very few volumes and measurements can be made. In 2010, we published a comprehensive integrated spirometry, and I will summarize it in few words. In a 1 month old, I can get every measurement that I can get from anyone in this room, in any adult. So it's over. You can track it from infancy all the way to adulthood. So how did we develop La Petite Roche? It was a basic generic equipment, custom-made setup that we built that measures the tidal, means the resting breathing, and the raised volume. In 1999, we combined the nitrogen washout that was in a commercial system, the Sensormedic 2600, and our custom-made setup and measured the residual volume. In 2009, I did say to you that the functional residual capacity, FRC, has been measured the only volume for 40 years. One way only. We found another way that is absolutely more accurate and more stable, that doesn't have any errors. We measured what we call the static FRC in 2009. In 2010, our comprehensive spirometry or protocol included 7 new lung volumes at raised lung volume. I will add, there is not a single volume left to measure in infants. It's over. So La Petite Roche is the only device that can measure all these volumes. This is how the setup of the lab with my assistant, with computer monitoring the baby, and I hold the baby and we perform this, and I've done this for 15 years. What's the current status of equipment on the market? The Ecomedics, which is a Swiss company, has a machine that do the raised volume but then measures the lung volume, FRC, with the sulfur hexafluoride. I won't get into it deeply. All I could tell you, there are potential risks for infants. In my understanding, it will not be approved for use in humans. I'm a toxicologist, and it has many risks. One of them, it affects the eye. One of them, if you get a spark, you get toxic gases where you are. Number two, a Jaeger system that measures again prismography and raised volume. There is another machine, Inspire. It's been on the market for more than 10 years, used in big multi-center studies by any big center you can imagine, from Harvard to Stanford. As of December 2010, this past December, it disappeared from the market. It gave conflicting measurements, and as I said, prismographic measurements still have errors in infants. And measuring the resting tidal breathing is insensitive to discriminate between disease and the healthy. So what are we going to use this machine for? The applications. I'm going to choose 3 major diseases that you know: asthma, cystic fibrosis, and bronchopulmonary dysplasia. All of this, the machine will help improve the care of infants. Asthma, I don't have to tell you the percentage of asthma. Look at the y-axis. It has all the way to 40%. All the countries of the world, and all the curves are going up until 2005. This highest one is Australia, by the way, and this is the United Kingdom in purple. So, why asthma? Preschoolers before 6 years of age, 50% have wheezing. And the majority who have persistent wheezing, they start before age 3 years. Guess what? 10 or 15% have a diagnosis of true asthma at school age. What am I trying to say? Oh, your baby is wheezing? Okay. It looks like he has asthma. We'll find out later. Put him on the asthma medication, put him on steroids until he starts doing lung function for us at age 6. Then we can tell you if it was wrong or right to give him the medicine. That's the bottom line. That's how we treat infants. Measuring lung function in infants shortens the pathway to a correct diagnosis, to effective treatment, and minimizes needless interventions. In my lab, many of the quoted infants who have asthma, emergency room every day, when they're referred to clinic, adding lung function in my head, several of them, at least 2 dozen, are off medication, and they are now in their teens and they don't have any asthma. So a parent doesn't like treatment when you don't know for sure the diagnosis. Cystic fibrosis. It occurs roughly in every 3,000 live births. About 1,000 infants are diagnosed each year. There are about 30,000 in the United States who have cystic fibrosis. It's a top genetic killer in children and young adults in the US. Lung disease is present in the first day of life, in early infancy. Lung function tests show that it does happen. So monitoring lung function will improve CF care. And if they invent a drug that cures CF, and they come to La Petite Roche, I can tell them in the first 2 or 3 months if it's working or not. If they give it to the mother, I will tell them too, because we test babies from the first month of life. Bronchopulmonary dysplasia is the chronic lung disease of the newborn who is born premature. That's what BPD is. 7,000 to 10,000 are affected each year in the United States. It's a real socioeconomic and medical burden. It requires frequent hospitalizations for recurrent wheezing, respiratory infections, and related issues. And some have persistent symptoms into childhood and adulthood. Actually, most of you would know COPD, because you smoked. Honestly, no. Today, COPD is an extension of those who survived bronchopulmonary dysplasia. So all the way from premature birth, all the way to adulthood. It's COPD of today too. Patient care. This will improve, having La Petite Roche will improve patient care. We'll have early diagnosis. Testing would be guided by patient symptoms and the response to treatment. Improvement in infant health leading to long-term benefits. Mental and emotional benefits for patients and the parents who are giving a drug and they are not sure. What are the benefits of La Petite Roche? As I said earlier, the current standard of care of infant is based on presumptions instead of objective measurements. For example, wheezing is treated as asthma. Until they do the lung function, we see the curve obstructed, he improves with albuterol, oh, you have asthma. Or we do the lung function, it's normal, oh, you have something else. Are you saying I don't have asthma? I've been treated for 4 or 5 years. And that's exactly what it makes a difference having a machine like this. It provides clear diagnostic measurements for infant respiratory diseases and disorders. disorders like what? Your lungs are normal, but you have weakness of the chest wall. It can tell me how much lung volume you can have if you're paralyzed or you have muscle disease. That's a disorder. Retesting to monitor improvement of lung function and to assess treatment efficacy, or to know if your treatment is the wrong one. Some babies, we give them the albuterol that they're getting it every day, several times a day, and we discover it makes the lung function worse. Avoids unnecessary treatment and related side effects. Thank you very much. I would like to introduce Mr. Ben Wofford, who's going to talk about other aspects that I know nothing about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Morris. I've been working with Dr. Morris for the past month or two, and have been given the opportunity to come up with some of the business aspects of Le Petit Roche that Dr. Morris has invented, and some of the fantastic benefits that I've seen just in the last month or two. Let's look at our market. There are approximately 4,200,000 babies born in the USA each year, 30% of which will be diagnosed with wheezing, as Dr. Morris touched on earlier. That translates into a lot of infant lung disease, and what corresponds to we need an infant lung function testing machine to provide correct diagnoses. There are approximately 21,000 hospitals in the U.S. and Europe, and when we get this machine finished and bring it to market, we're going to be targeting neonatal suites, children's hospitals, and generally hospitals that treat a lot of children. Let's look at our competition and the competitive advantage that we have. As Dr. Morris talked earlier, the existing technology does not work. There's several products on the market. The Exelyzer D is brand new, and we're really not sure, what's going on with that. CareFusion's machine has been on the market for a long time. That was the Jaeger system that Dr. Morris discussed earlier. And then Inspire was the machine that's been on the market for 10 years and was removed from the market last year. The SensorMedics sells for $60,000. The Inspire machine sold for $110,000. Let's take a look at the chart to the right. What we've done is in the far left-hand column, we have listed the test data that is necessary to obtain a complete and accurate lung function test in a child or an adult. Dr. Morris is more qualified to talk about what all these mean, but I know that they're necessary. So let's move on to the right, and we'll see Le Petit Roche, which is the machine that Dr. Morris has built, invented, and if you look under that column, you'll see that all of those test data we're able to achieve results with his machine. And then let's go ahead and look at the other machines that have been on the market, the Exelyzer D, which is coming on, the CareFusion, and the Inspire. The green squares are what those machines test. The red squares, and where we have no, those machines will not accurately test that data. So it's fairly obvious to see these machines are seriously insufficient in achieving what we're trying to achieve, and that is an accurate and complete diagnosis of an infant or child's lung function or respiratory disease. Regulatory. We will have to seek FDA approval, and that would be a 510K. I think it's good to know that Dr. Morris has been using his machine, as he said, for the last 15 years. He has improved it as time has gone on, and there is substantial clinical data to support that his machine works. The existing technology and equipment have been used in over 500 infant lung function tests. And I want to make one thing clear. Dr. Morris touched on it earlier. When we use the word infant, we're really talking about babies of approximately 4 weeks old to 5 or 6, and we're talking about infants and small children that are incapable of responding to a doctor's command. When an older child or an adult like us goes to the doctor and we do a lung function test, the doctor tells us to breathe in, breathe out, hold your breath, things like that we can respond to and follow those commands, and he can get an accurate lung function test. The difference is in an infant and a small child, they're not capable of following those commands. That's why we have a much more specialized machine that had to be invented so that we can get the accurate test data that Dr. Morse's machine can get. The Le Petit Roche will be validated for a 510K within months after completion of a manufacturer's prototype. The FDA's determination is usually made within 90 days. Milestones. We need to raise funds for company startup and development of a commercial prototype. We're working with an engineer at UALR to work up cost estimates for our commercial prototype, and we're hoping this can be done, is going to be finished in the next few weeks. Regulatory approval, we talked about that earlier. It shouldn't take more than 90 days once we get the commercial prototype developed. And let me expound on that just for a second. Dr. Morse's machine, as he indicated and I've mentioned, has evolved over the last 10 or 15 years. What we need to do is build a commercial machine, a machine that can be, that the computer software is current, the technology is all modern and up to date and ready to use in 2011 or 2012. That's what we're talking about when we talk about a commercial prototype. Regulatory approval, 90 days. Then we get to manufacturing and distribution of Le Petit Roche. As the way we see it, there's really two avenues to go. A, we build the commercial prototype and move on to licensing the machine to a major market player. Dr. Morse has already received substantial interest from major market players about his machine, and I don't really need to say more about that right now. Or B, manufacture and distribute on a proprietary basis. Let's look at some projections. With an investment of $250,000, we will get the infant lung function device, Le Petit Roche, to the point of A, licensing, or proprietary manufacturing and distribution. I've done some projected gross sales, and you'll see in year one, it's going to start out slow. It's going to take the existing environment, the doctors, medical facilities, a little while, and talking to Dr. Morse about this, to understand that now they have access to a machine that can accurately test this data. And so, we expect to sell 50 units in the first year, 200 units in the second year, and we're looking at maybe 1,000 in the third year for a total of 1,250 in the first 3 years. Now, this is after we've got a commercial manufactured machine. We're estimating a sales price of approximately $60,000, and if you look at the numbers, we're talking about gross sales in 3 years of $75 million. To summarize, Le Petit Roche will be a commercial machine that is user-friendly with all measurements automated and will give the parents of a child with a recurring respiratory problem a diagnosis, the appropriate treatment, and resolution of the symptoms. Thank you. And I guess
Thank you. Questions?
Say questions, yeah. And Dr. Morse will answer the technical questions.
A couple of things. One, you mentioned a selling price of $60,000. What is the what would be the anticipated margin? What would it cost?
Paul, at this point, we don't even have a commercial prototype ready. I'm estimating 15, maybe 20,000 in
so it's multiple X
cost.
Potential, return.
I mean, the target's 3 times cost. I mean, that's that's what we're looking.
So that's consistent with where you were. Okay, and then the question I may have missed something because I was just a little bit late. Apologize. You said it's the FDA would go fairly quickly because it's substantially equivalent. Well, what is different? I mean, and also,
Well,
what's the IP position? Maybe I'd come at it a different way.
Well, what's different is it's much better. I mean, the 510K approval is the FDA's regulation that says to get a device approved for marketing, it has to be substantially equivalent to an existing device on the market. And the existing devices are the CareFusion, the Inspire, and the Ecomedics machines. So I think we can easily prove that our machine is not only substantially equivalent, it's far better than what's on the market, and safer.
But you do have IP that'll protect your secret sauce, or
Yes. Yeah.
One critical difference, because I didn't have time in this presentation, is when I said plethysmography having errors or so far, in the Le Petit Roche, if the baby gives me a measurement, say 100 ml volume, the other machines cannot tell you if this is the correct one or not. I can tell on every baby because it is designed in such a way. I have a calibrated commercial syringe. Actually, I'm obsessed. I have another syringe that calibrates the first syringe, that calibrates the machine. So if the baby gives me 100 and I inject 100 and I get 100, I can confirm. I do this on every baby. So this accuracy or precision is so important because the babies grow every day. In other words, that's all.
Two questions. One, you mentioned the hardware. Is there a disposable or single-use element in your device? And also, are these tests, are they reimbursable?
Yes, they are reimbursable. They have Medicaid reimburses. Yes, they are reimbursable. There are parts that are disposable, like some of the tubes, some of the masks. Other components can be sterilized, and we do that between every infant. No one is using the same setup from one to the other. Yes.
Other questions?
You indicated that you've been developing this and using this for 15 years. What about the issue of this having been in the marketplace and that being a problem for patentability? Have you just been using it to test it, or have you been using it in your practice, charging patients for your services?
We did both. We started with charged patients, and we did research. We did research looking at the normals. We don't have many normals data, healthy babies. You need to know who is sick by knowing how good or what the healthy looks like. So yes, we tested babies all over the years. The improvements came up in developing new techniques. As when I started, they measured FRC. Now I measure everything in the same baby.
And so these new measurements are recent?
Absolutely recent. They're published in 2010, if I'm correct. The Comprehensive Integrated Protocol, yes. In February 2011, actually.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. We'll go on to the next talk. I would say there's a strong IP position behind this, just to answer your question. Okay, thank you.